Hey guys, it's Kesara, and today I'm going to be doing my October reading vlog part 1. Okay, so I have been really sucking at vlogging. Like, I started this reading vlog last week, and then I didn't finish it. And then I started it the week before last week, and I didn't finish it. So hopefully, third time's the charm, and I'll actually finish this one, because it's been several weeks since I've uploaded a reading vlog. I'm actually really excited for everything that I'm reading right now, and it's finally October. I'm so excited for all of these fall reads. I think what really helped with this, though, was that when I got to the end of September, and I was like kind of done with sci-fi, I didn't force myself to finish my TBR, which I feel like in the past I would have tried to force myself to finish my TBR, but since I had gotten so many read already, I was just like, you know what, I could just start my October TBR. There's like, I think it was like 4 books left on my TBR for September, and I just decided just to not do those and to start on my October TBR, which has worked really, really well for me. And because of that, I've already read 3 books this month. I know, it is Monday, October 5th. I've already started and finished 3 books this month. I don't know how that happened, and I'm almost done with the 4th. Actually, I'm like really close to finishing it. And I'm really happy with the TBR that I chose for October. If you haven't seen my TBR, I'll link it up in the cards for you guys, but I was really nervous about my October TBR because a lot of the books seem to be very polarizing books, but it's like what I'm in the mood for. And so far, it is really, really working for me. So as always, I'm gonna start with the books that I'm currently reading. The first book that I'm currently reading is Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky. So this book was one that I was really, really nervous about because people either seem to love it or hate it. And I can kind of see why some people wouldn't like this book. Like, I can kind of see it, but I am loving it so much. I'm really, really enjoying this book so far. I have not been able to put it down. I started it, I want to say, not yesterday, but the night before. Did I start it the night before or did I start it yesterday? I think I might have started it yesterday. It was either the day before yesterday, like really late at night, or yesterday morning. I don't remember which, but that's where I ended yesterday. And the only reason I didn't continue on and finishing it because it was midnight and I absolutely had to go to sleep in order to go to work this morning. So I'm super excited to get back and finish this. This is exactly what I was looking for this month because it is so beautifully written, yet terribly creepy in the best way possible. It's such a beautiful mixture of fantasy and horror, and I'm loving every second of it. And it's very character driven and slow burn, and I'm loving it so much. So I'm really, really excited to see where this is going because like the ending is very action packed too. There's a lot of stuff happening that I don't know where this is going. Like, I have no idea. I love all the twists and turns, and I'm really, really enjoying this so far. The other book that I'm currently reading is House of Leaves by Mark Daniel Linsky. So this one I started last week, so I started it a bit earlier, but I only have the physical book for this one. I don't think there is an audiobook. I have been switching between the audiobook and the physical book for Imaginary Friend, which is part of the reason why I can read it faster, but also because I could not put it down yesterday. I'm actually really enjoying House of Leaves as well. I'm right about there, so still pretty close to the beginning. I can really only read like 1 chapter at a time for this book, especially like if I'm reading at night. Like, I kind of have to read during the day because this book kind of gets me creepy, and if I hear like any little sound, I'm like looking over my shoulder and stuff, and it gives me like goosebumps. So I'm really enjoying this as well. I'm excited to see where this book is going because I have no idea, but I like the way that it's written, which I think is kind of the whole point of this book. But I'm really enjoying that more documentary type style, while at the same time still having more like journal entry styles as well. Also, just like the subject matter about like a house that's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside is really intriguing to me. Like, I want to see how that's possible. Like, I have no idea, but I'm really interested in seeing how that's possible. I'm really hoping that this book has a really good payoff at the end because I feel like that ending will really either make or break this book for me, and I'm really big on endings. So I'm really excited for this, but also still really nervous. Unlike Imaginary Friend, where I was super nervous for it, but I'm not anymore. So I'm enjoying reading both of these right now. They're exactly the types of books that I wanted when I made this TBR in the first place. So it is Tuesday, October 6th, and yesterday I finished Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky. This was absolutely the book I was looking for when I made my October TBR. Like, I was just looking for that beautiful writing, slow burn, character driven, slightly creepy, but not like gory and bloody, if you know what I mean, horror slash fantasy novel. And this book was exactly that. I absolutely loved it. Seriously, this is a 700-page book that I read in less than 48 hours. It was the perfect book for me at the perfect time. I will say though, if I wasn't in that mood where I was looking for that, I could have potentially really not liked this book, because this book is definitely not for everyone, but I loved every second of it. It gave me all the atmospheric, creepy vibes that I wanted from this book. It had such great scenes in it. There were some great, like, really creepy, scary scenes that I absolutely loved. It was beautifully written. All of the characters were really well developed. I loved all of the characters in this book. I automatically got attached to pretty much all the characters in this book. There's one character in here, Mary Catherine, that, like, literally the page she was introduced, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to love this character. Mind you, I will say this book has a lot of religious, like, theology in it. Like, not theology, I don't know how to explain that. Kind of like how Percy Jackson has a lot of Greek mythology in it. This has a lot of religious ideas and themes that it's obviously motivated by, and it's Christian themes that it has. So I can see why that would really kind of affect a lot of people, those who are very religious and wouldn't want a horror novel made based off of their religion, as well as atheists who would just be like, why is this about religion, if you know what I mean. So, like, I'm not on either side of those spectrums. Like, I took it as a work of fiction the same way I would take Percy Jackson as a work of fiction and not think that it's like spewing religious ideology for the Greek gods. So, like, for me, that's how I took this book. I think other people will take it differently, but I really enjoyed this, like, so much. I love just like the mystery and the intrigue, especially at the beginning in this book, and like everything that happens. Absolutely fantastic. Loved every second of this. This was exactly what I was looking for in the month of October. That being said, since I read this book, I am not as much in that mood as I was before. I'm still in that mood, and I will still be reading those books, but I'm a little bit more in a fantasy mood than I was in a horror, because this really satisfied sort of that craving that I was having for that kind of like sort of creepy but not overly scary, and at the same time really well written. So like this satisfied that, and I really enjoyed it. By the way, I gave this 4.75 stars. But because of that, I find myself leaning a little bit more towards wanting to read fantasy. I think part of it is just because I'm not really reading any fantasy right now. Well, I kind of am. I did not mention this yesterday, but I am still technically currently reading Memories of Ice by Stephen Erickson. Now, I started this book back in March. I put it on hold for a while, and then I restarted it again, I believe, in August, and I'm still reading it. Actually, I had gotten like maybe 30 pages read of this book then, but I decided to restart it yesterday because for some reason I was just in the mood to pick up Malazan, and I actually read 122 pages. So I made pretty significant progress on that, especially considering that I read 100 pages in one day when previously I had only read 22 pages in like 7 months. So I feel like that's really good progress. I am really enjoying this. It's definitely a Malazan book, so you don't really know what's going on until like it's already happened, and then you're like, oh, that's really cool. And I think just like the nature of this story and the intrigue and all of that, it's just fitting my mood perfectly that I'm really enjoying this. I also decided to pick up a new audiobook since I was switching between the audio and the physical book for Imaginary Friend. I decided to pick up The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I've listened to about like 1 hour of the audiobook. It's only like a 6-hour audiobook. So far, I'm enjoying it. It definitely intrigued me a lot more than some of the other classic horror that I've read, because like towards the end of last month, I read The Turn of the Screw by Henry James, and that one really didn't stick with me, but this one is definitely sticking with me a little bit more than that, and I think I'm going to really enjoy it. Part of the reason I picked that up is because I'm enjoying kind of the themes that I'm seeing in House of Leaves, so I kind of want a little bit more of like that haunted house sort of feel, even though House of Leaves is not really haunted, it's just the house itself is weird. But like either way, I feel like that's just a really cool theme that I'm really enjoying right now, so I kind of want to explore that a little bit more. I haven't made any progress on House of Leaves. I mean, I've made progress on pretty much everything else, and I feel bad for not making progress on this one, but I feel like Imaginary Friend was just filling my horror vibes so much that I couldn't read this and that at the same time, but I'm really excited to get back to this one today. So it is Wednesday, October 7th, and yesterday I finished The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I have to say, there are some parts of this novel I really loved just how creepy it got, but there were other parts that I just got kind of bored during, which surprised me. I didn't expect to get that feeling from it. I think I was starting to fall out of my horror mood, so maybe that's why, but overall, I did enjoy this, but I didn't love it as much as I was hoping to. Like, I don't know what it is about me and classic horror, but classic horror doesn't really work for me necessarily that well in comparison to like modern horror. I don't know why that is, but I enjoyed it. I didn't love it though, so I ended up giving it 3.75 stars. So when I finished that, I felt like a little bit out of the horror mood, so I wanted to pick up a fantasy book because Memories of Ice was working so well for me yesterday, but there's only so much Malazan that I can take at a time. So I decided to pick up The Bone Shard's Daughter by Andrea Stewart. So this is a book that I actually got from NetGalley back in September, but I never got around to reading it just because I had so many things that I was reading in September, but I've heard so many great things about it, and I was able to find the audiobook on my library. So I decided to start the audiobook for that. I'm about 4 hours into the audiobook. I am really enjoying it. It is definitely a fantastic, like, high fantasy, Asian-inspired novel that is really interesting. It's not, like, my favorite, though. Like, I feel like there are other, like, debut Asian-inspired fantasy novels that I like more than it, but I am still really enjoying it, and there's still a lot that can happen in this book. So, like I said, about a third of the way into it, so I'm excited to see where it's going, but I just got the audiobook for Mexican Gothic for my library, and as soon as I saw I got the audiobook for this, it was like suddenly I was in the horror mood again. So I'm thinking about starting this tonight instead of continuing on with that one. So I haven't decided what I'm gonna do yet, but I'm really leaning towards starting Mexican Gothic today. It's been a couple days. It's now Saturday, October 10th, and I did start Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This story is phenomenal. Like, I absolutely love the story, and the idea of this book is so interesting and just like the type of book that I would have absolutely wanted to read this month. But the writing, oh my gosh, like, the writing is kind of ruining it for me. It's a stylistic choice 100%. Like, it's not anything against this writer. Like, a lot of writers prefer to write this way where the language is more plain, but personally I like it when the language is creepy rather than just the images. The images in this book are incredibly creepy and terrifying and horrifying, but it's written in such a plain way that it's like telling you what's going on rather than like just describing the image so you can see it in your mind very well, and that's kind of ruining it for me. I think there's so much potential in this book that is just kind of lost because of that. I'm really sad about that because I could have potentially really love this book. Like, this could have potentially be one of like my favorite books of all time, but because of the way it's written, it's actually frustrating me. I'm almost done with it. Like, I'm right there, and I will most definitely finish this book today. And like, the thing about it is I can't even be disappointed in this because I didn't have high expectations after Gods of Jade and Shadow. This was kind of like, maybe I'll like it sort of thing. There's just so much potential lost in this book. Oh my gosh. Ugh. It is fantastic, by the way. The story is fantastic, and if writing doesn't bother you, I'm very pet peevey about writing, and like, I like certain writing styles a lot more than other writing styles, but if writing doesn't bother you, this book is gonna be phenomenal and you're probably gonna love it. The story has some really great twists that I'm absolutely loving. It's still Saturday, and I did finish Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I honestly don't have that much to say about this book other than what I have already said about it in the last clip. Story-wise, absolutely love it. Execution of the story, not so much. So while I did enjoy this book, the way the writing was done kind of ruined it for me. So I ended up giving this 3.5 stars. I would still recommend this book to you, especially if you don't read a lot of horror, because I feel like part of the reason why this is not working for me is because I've been reading books like Imaginary Friend and House of Leaves at the same time. Those books have a very specific writing style that really works for me. While this feels more like it's for a general audience rather than more horror readers, which I don't consider myself a horror reader, but I feel like I've read enough of it now that maybe I'm becoming that a little bit. I don't know, that's kind of weird. But anyways, still a good book. I would still recommend it to you if you don't read a whole lot of horror, but I definitely didn't get the creepy vibes from it the way that I wanted to. Like, there are creepy images, but the images don't give me a visceral reaction the way that other horror novels that I'm currently reading give me a visceral reaction. Which reminds me, I should probably update you guys on House of Leaves and how this is going. I've read one more chapter since we last talked about House of Leaves. Honestly, the last chapter was kind of like out of nowhere. It was talking about echoes, and it was a very scientific explanation of echoes, like from Greek mythology to actual how sound works and stuff like that. So like, it was fascinating, don't get me wrong. I was completely into it the entire time. I'm just not sure how it's related to the rest of the book, so I don't know what I think about that, but I am enjoying this. Like I said, even though like I don't know how it's gonna relate to the rest of the book and how it fits in with the story, I was fascinated by what was happening. The footnotes, man, some of the footnotes in here are are really good, especially the writing style for the footnotes. I don't know how the author does it, but there are certain times where I can feel the pace of the story speeding up and slowing down. I will read faster automatically when I feel like the pace of the story is speeding up, and then it would come to a part where I can just like take a breath. Like it would feel like I was just rushing through for a little while. So like I like that aspect of it where I feel like the author's really controlling the way that I'm reading the book in a way that I did not expect. So this is kind of weird, but it's also really good in a weird way also. I don't know how to explain this. Like this is gonna be one of those books that I don't know how to do a review on. Definitely still really excited to see where this book is going. And also, I did make progress on The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. So I'm about halfway through it now, and I'm really enjoying it. The audiobook is fantastic, by the way. I love all the audiobook narrators. I think there's like about 4 different ones that it is rotating through because there are different points of views. My favorite point of view is Lynn, the Emperor's daughter, but there are other points of views that are really interesting as well. I am definitely like the target audience of this book. Like it is Asian-inspired high fantasy. It's multiple character point of views, incredibly political in very complicated ways. It has an amazing magic system. So like literally it has everything that I could possibly want from a book. So I'm loving it. Of course I am. I don't know if it's gonna be one of my favorite books of all times. It really depends on how the ending goes, but I am really enjoying it so far. If you've read any of these books, let me know down in the comments because I'd love to discuss with you guys. I post videos on Sundays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, so consider subscribing. And if you'd like to be notified as soon as I upload, you can click that little bell icon. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up to support my channel. All social media links are in the description down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.